Officer Jenna Hawley slammed on her brakes the moment she saw the dog collapse in front of her patrol car. At first, she thought it was just another stray until the dog lifted his head and she saw his eyes. Her blood ran cold. It was Thor. Her former canine partner. The hero who vanished without a trace. The dog, she was told, had been safely relocated. But the creature lying in the dirt wasn't safe. He was starving, injured, trembling, and desperately trying to stand. Not to escape, to reach her. As Jenna rushed to him, Thor did something that stopped her heart. He forced himself upright, staggered 3 steps, and pressed his muzzle against her leg, before looking over his shoulder toward a dark alley. Growling with what little strength he had left, Thor hadn't just shown up to be rescued. He'd come back to lead her to something terrifying. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Officer Jenna Hawley had started her morning like any other, coffee in one hand, radio crackling with routine calls, the city slowly waking beneath a soft blanket of sunrise. She had been on the force for 12 years, long enough to know that most days passed without surprises. Yet something about today felt unusually heavy, as if the air carried a quiet warning she couldn't quite identify. Her patrol car rolled down the familiar avenue, lined with quiet shops and early commuters. She parked near a small plaza, stepped out, and stretched her legs. The shift had barely begun when she noticed a group of bystanders gathering near the sidewalk ahead. Their expressions weren't panicked, just troubled, confused, whispering. Jenna's instincts flared. She approached cautiously, fingers grazing the radio on her shoulder. "Everything all right here?" A woman pointed toward a thin shape curled beside a lamppost. "Officer, that dog's been lying there for hours. He won't move." Jenna stepped closer and the world seemed to tilt. The dog was skeletal, ribs jutting sharply beneath dull, patchy fur. His breathing was shallow, his paws trembling against the pavement. He lifted his head weakly, just enough for Jenna to see his eyes. Her heart stopped. Those eyes. She knew them, a familiar amber glimmer, full of loyalty and pain. Eyes she had once trusted with her life. "Thor?" She whispered, voice cracking. The dog blinked slowly, as if confirming her impossible guess. Jenna dropped to her knees, hands trembling as she reached for him. Thor let out a soft, broken whine, the sound of a warrior brought to his limit. In an instant, Jenna's calm morning shattered. This wasn't just a stray dog. This was her dog, her retired canine partner, her missing hero, and something terrible had happened to him. For a moment, Jenna couldn't breathe. The city noise faded, the murmuring crowd disappeared, and all she could hear was her own heartbeat slamming against her ribs. She reached out slowly, afraid that touching him might reveal she was wrong, that this was just another stray with the same eyes, the same posture, the same quiet dignity. But when her fingers brushed his cheek, Thor lifted his head an inch and rested it against her palm. A soft gasp escaped Jenna's lips. It was him. Her. Thor. Flashbacks crashed into her mind-training sessions in the rain. Late-night patrols, the rescue mission where he saved her life by sensing a hidden threat before she did. The day he got injured and the department forced her to retire him for his own good. And the worst memory of all, the morning she arrived to take him home, only to be told he'd been relocated to an adoption facility and then disappeared. She had searched for him everywhere. Filed reports. Called shelters, even checked alleys on her days off. Thor had vanished without a trace, until now. Jenna swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Thor, what happened to you?" He blinked slowly, exhaustion pulling at every movement. His once strong frame was gaunt, legs shaking as he tried to shift closer to her. She immediately wrapped her arms around him, supporting his weight. People nearby watched in stunned silence as the tough officer broke down, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You're okay," she whispered. "I've got you now. I won't let you go again." Thor closed his eyes. Trusting her completely, just as he always had, Jenna pulled out her radio with shaking hands. "Dispatch. This is Unit 12. I need emergency veterinary transport now." Because whatever Thor had been through, it was worse than anything she had imagined. The paramedic van arrived within minutes, siren cutting through the morning air. But to Jenna, it felt like hours. She held Thor carefully, one arm supporting his neck, the other wrapped around his frail body. His breathing was shallow, far too shallow, and every rise and fall of his chest seemed like a battle he wasn't sure he could keep fighting. "Stay with me, buddy," Jenna whispered, brushing dirt from his muzzle. "Don't you dare leave me again." Thor blinked slowly, lifting his gaze to hers. Those amber eyes, once sharp with confidence and discipline, were now clouded with exhaustion and pain. But beneath it, he still recognized her. His tail moved just once, barely a twitch, but enough to crush Jenna's heart. As the crowd parted, giving space for the paramedics, Jenna felt memories beginning to choke her. The training academy. Thor weaving through obstacles, tail high, ears perked, ready for anything. The nighttime raids. Thor leading the way, alerting her to dangers no human could detect. The explosion. The day she thought she'd lost him forever, only to find him dragging himself toward her, refusing to leave her side despite his injury. He had saved her life that day. And afterward, when the department forced her to retire him due to his injury, she fought tooth and nail to adopt him. But paperwork shifted, offices gave conflicting information, and by the time she reached the facility where he was supposed to be, Thor was gone. He was transferred, they said. No forwarding info. They said, "We'll call if he turns up," they said. That call never came. Jenna blamed herself every single day, now, kneeling on a sunlit street with him trembling in her arms. The weight of those lost months crushed her. "I'm so sorry," she breathed, voice cracking. "I should have found you. I should have." Thor's body suddenly went limp. "Thor!" Jenna shouted, panic ripping through her. The paramedics rushed in, lifting him onto a stretcher with swift but gentle movements. Jenna followed, refusing to let his paw slip from her hand. Whatever had happened to Thor had left him fighting for his life, and Jenna wasn't losing him again. The veterinary emergency room buzzed with urgency as Jenna burst through the doors beside the paramedics. Thor lay on the stretcher, barely conscious, his breathing shallow and uneven. The vet team rushed to his side, guiding him into the examination room while Jenna followed, refusing to be more than a step behind. "Officer, we need space to work," a technician said gently, but Jenna shook her head. "I'm not leaving him. Not again." The vet, Dr. Alden, gave her a sympathetic nod. "She can stay, just keep clear." Jenna pressed herself into a corner, eyes locked on Thor as the team examined him. Machines beeped. Scissors cut through what remained of his dirty fur. Needles slipped into fragile veins. Every sound made Jenna's stomach twist tighter. Thor didn't fight the treatment. He was too weak even to lift his head. "How bad is it?" Jenna finally forced out. Dr. Alden sighed deeply. "He's severely malnourished, dehydrated. His muscle mass has deteriorated. And these wounds," he pointed to scars along Thor's ribs and neck. "Some of them are old. Some are recent." Jenna felt cold. "Recent? As in, someone hurt him?" The vet hesitated, then nodded. "It appears that way. But there's something else." He lifted Thor's paw, turning it gently to reveal deep grooves worn into the pads. Jenna's breath caught. "He's been walking long distances," Dr. Alden explained. "For days, maybe weeks. Tracking something. Or someone." Tracking. Her heart slammed against her chest. Thor only ever tracked when he was working, when someone was in danger. But he's retired, she whispered. Why would he push himself like this? A nurse stepped forward with an X-ray image. There's more. These markings under his fur? They're not from fights. They look consistent, repeated, like he was restrained. Or held somewhere. Jenna's hands curled into fists. A storm of dread and anger churned inside her. Thor had disappeared months ago. Now he'd returned mangled, starved, injured, and nothing about his condition felt. Random. Someone had taken him, someone had used him, and Thor had escaped. But not before discovering something far more dangerous. Thor lay quietly on the padded vet table, and 4 line running into his foreleg, fluids dripping steadily to stabilize him. His breathing had evened out slightly, but he was still far too weak. Jenna sat beside him, one hand stroking the top of his head, her thumb brushing gently between his ears the way she used to after long shifts. You're safe now, she whispered. No more pain. No more running. Thor's eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. Even with the exhaustion weighing him down, he tried to lift his head, just a small movement, but enough to send a jolt of worry through Jenna. Hey, easy, she said, guiding him back down. Rest. But Thor didn't want to rest. He nudged her hand weakly, then shifted his paw across the blanket, dragging it slowly toward the edge of the table. Jenna frowned. What are you trying to show me, buddy? Thor grunted softly, determination flickering in his dim amber eyes. He tried again, paw scraping forward, straining against his own weakness. He wasn't moving randomly. He was pointing. Jenna followed the direction of his paw toward the exit door. You want to go somewhere? She whispered. Thor blinked once. Purposefully, Dr. Alden stepped closer. Officer, he needs rest. Moving him could. Thor let out a quiet, urgent whine. The same sound he used during active duty when he had found a lead worth pursuing. Jenna felt her pulse accelerate. You're trying to tell me something, aren't you? Thor gathered what little strength he had left and pushed himself an inch forward, refusing to drop his gaze from the door. It wasn't random. It wasn't confusion. Thor wasn't asking for comfort. He was asking for a mission. And Jenna realized with a chill whatever he'd escaped from. He wanted to lead her back to it. Jenna hesitated only a moment. Thor was barely able to stand, yet the fire in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He wasn't confused. He wasn't delirious. He had a purpose, and he needed her to trust him. Doc, she said quietly, unhook him. Dr. Alden blinked. Officer Halle, he's not stable. Moving him now could seriously. Thor pressed his paw against the table again. Harder this time, and let out a deep, urgent whine that silenced the entire room. Jenna stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Thor's shoulder. He's trying to lead me somewhere. And if Thor thinks someone's in danger, someone is. Dr. Alden looked conflicted, but finally sighed. Fine, but he walks slow, and you monitor him every second. Minutes later, 4 removed and a soft wrap protecting his weakened leg. Thor attempted to stand. His legs trembled violently beneath him. Jenna moved to help, but he pushed her hand away gently, as if to say, let me try. Inch by inch, Thor rose until he was standing, shaky but determined. Okay, buddy, Jenna whispered. Show me. Thor limped toward the hospital exit, each step labored but purposeful. Jenna followed at his side, ready to catch him at any moment. Staff and visitors watched in stunned silence as the battered canine hobbled out into the world again. Once outside, Thor lifted his nose to the wind. He sniffed once, twice. Then he turned sharply to the right toward an alleyway behind the clinic. Jenna frowned. Back there? Are you sure? Thor didn't answer. He simply limped forward, tail low, ears high, his entire body locked onto something only he could sense. Jenna followed him into the narrow alley, her hand resting lightly on her holster out of instinct. The deeper they walked, the stronger Thor's posture became. His pace quickened. His breathing sharpened. He wasn't wandering, he was tracking. They reached the end of the alley, a dead end littered with crates and trash bins. Thor stopped, stared at a metal grate in the wall, and growled, a sound filled with memory and warning. Jenna's blood went cold. Thor hadn't just escaped something. He had found the trail again. Jenna's heart pounded. As she stepped closer to the metal grate Thor had growled at, it looked like nothing more than a ventilation cover, rusted, dented, half buried beneath trash bags. But Thor's reaction wasn't mild curiosity. It was recognition, fear, anger. Thor, what happened here? Jenna whispered. Thor shuffled forward, nose pressing against the lower edge. His entire body trembled, not from weakness, but from a memory he desperately wanted Jenna to understand. He pawed at the grate, claws scraping the rusted metal with a desperate urgency. Jenna knelt beside him and tugged at the grate. It didn't budge. She braced her foot against the brick wall and pulled harder. With a loud metallic crack, the bolt snapped and the grate swung open. A cold draft rushed out, damp, stale, carrying the faint smell of bleach and something far worse. Jenna's stomach tightened. She grabbed her flashlight and shined it inside. The beam illuminated a narrow crawl space leading into a small, concrete chamber beneath the building. The walls were stained. A broken chair lay on its side, ropes, a torn piece of fabric, and on the far wall, smeared in dirt or something darker, were scratch marks, deep, frantic. Human. Thor growled again, stepping closer. His nose almost touching the ground where dried droplets formed a faint trail. Dispatch, Jenna said into her radio, voice tight. I need backup at my location. Possible crime scene. Possible holding area. Thor limped forward into the chamber, ignoring Jenna's warnings to slow down. He sniffed the ground, then the overturned chair, then a small corner near the wall. Suddenly he stopped, completely still. Jenna's breath caught. You found something, didn't you? Thor lowered his head and nudged a small object out from under the debris. A child's shoe. Pink. Dirty. Torn. Jenna swallowed hard. Oh my God. Thor whined, a heartbreaking, urgent sound. This wasn't just where Thor had been held. This was where someone innocent had been trapped. And Thor was determined to lead Jenna to whoever was still missing. Backup had not yet arrived when Thor suddenly stiffened. His body, weak moments ago, now moved with the tense precision of a predator sensing danger. His ears shot upward, nose twitching rapidly as he inhaled a scent that electrified him. Jenna recognized the shift instantly. This wasn't confusion or memory. This was an active trail. Thor, what do you smell? She whispered, gripping her flashlight tighter. Thor stepped deeper into the chamber, ignoring the trembling in his legs. He lowered his head, sniffing the dirt floor, then jerked toward the far wall. His tail dropped low, a sign of distress, while his hackles rose in a trembling ridge across his spine. Jenna followed, shining her light where Thor focused. A faint streak of dark smudges trailed across the concrete. Not old stains, fresh ones. The metallic scent hit her nose a second later. Blood. But human. And recent. Thor's whine grew urgent. He nosed the floor, then dragged his paw across it as if drawing Jenna's attention to the direction the scent had traveled, toward another exit she hadn't noticed before. A narrow steel door, almost invisible against the grime-covered wall. Jenna's pulse quickened. She reached for the handle. Locked. Thor barked sharply, the sound echoing violently inside the chamber. He pawed at the door, claws scraping so desperately Jenna felt tears burn behind her eyes. Someone else was here, she breathed. And they were taken out this way. Thor growled, a low, trembling sound filled with fury and fear. He pressed his nose against the crack beneath the door, inhaling again. And Jenna saw something she had never seen in all her years working with him. He shivered, not from weakness, from dread. Jenna stepped closer, pressing her hand gently against his neck. "You know this scent, don't you?" Thor looked up at her, eyes glistening with something painfully human. Recognition, and urgency. He limped back toward the tunnel, glancing over his shoulder as if begging her to hurry. Whoever had been dragged through that door was still alive, and Thor was running out of time to find them. Jenna moved quickly, guiding Thor back through the narrow crawl space and into the alley above. Backup sirens echoed faintly in the distance, but Thor didn't wait for them. As soon as his paws hit open air, he lifted his head, sniffed sharply, and turned toward a row of abandoned buildings behind the clinic. His gait was uneven, but his determination was absolute. "Easy, boy," Jenna murmured. But Thor was already moving, limping with urgency toward a collapsed warehouse at the end of the block. The structure looked condemned. Boarded windows, broken bricks, a sagging roof. A place most officers would overlook. But Thor didn't. He approached the rusted loading door, sniffed the edges, and growled, a deep, rumbling sound that vibrated through the metal. Jenna swept her flashlight across the entrance and noticed something that made her breath hitch. The lock wasn't old. It was new, recently installed. Someone was using this place. Jenna radioed in. Unit 12 requesting immediate backup at warehouse off 5th and Raleigh. Suspected trafficking site. She didn't wait for confirmation. Thor pushed his shoulder against a loose section of paneling, nudging persistently. Jenna aimed her light through the small gap, and her stomach twisted. A staircase, descending underground. Jenna pried the metal aside just enough for Thor to squeeze through. He hesitated only for a second, then limped down the dark stairwell, every step echoing with eerie emptiness. Jenna followed, weapon drawn. The basement they entered was vast and cold, lit only by faint slivers of sunlight leaking through broken ceiling tiles. But the worst part wasn't the darkness. It was the silence. Everything here felt abandoned, but not long ago. Chains hung from the wall. A stained mattress lay, crumpled in a corner, and scattered across the floor were small items: crayons, a child's sock, a snapped hair clip. Thor whimpered softly and lifted his head toward a second door at the far end. The real horror wasn't here. It was behind that door. Jenna approached the second door with slow, careful steps, her flashlight beam trembling slightly across the concrete floor. Thor stood beside her, breathing hard, leaning against her leg for balance, but refusing to rest. His eyes stayed fixed on the door, pupils dilated, tail stiff with warning. Jenna recognized that stance instantly. Thor wasn't sensing danger. He was sensing someone. She placed her hand on the door handle and exhaled. "Okay, boy. We do this together." The handle creaked loudly as she pushed the door open. Her flashlight swept into a long, narrow room, bare walls, a single cot, scattered scraps of food containers, and the faint odor of fear. A makeshift living space. Or a prison. The beam landed on a torn backpack in the corner, decorated with colorful stickers of rockets and space planets. Jenna's heart stopped. She remembered that backpack. Every officer did. It belonged to Evan Carter, the 7-year-old boy who had vanished 2 weeks earlier, sparking one of the largest missing child investigations the city had ever seen. "Thor," Jenna whispered, voice cracking. "Is this why you came back?" Thor limped toward the backpack, nudging it gently with his nose before turning toward another object, a child's drawing taped crookedly to the wall. Jenna pulled it down carefully. The picture showed a stick-figure boy holding hands with a dog. Next to it, written in uneven crayon letters, "Dog help him." Jenna closed her eyes, fighting back tears. Evan had been here, alive, long enough to draw this. Long enough to hope anyone would find him. "Dispatch," Jenna said sharply into her radio. I have confirmation this location is connected to the Evan Carter case. I repeat, this site is linked to the missing child. Send full units now. Static crackled then. Copy that. Units en route. Thor suddenly stiffened again, ears perked, head turning sharply toward the far side of the room. He limped closer, nose dragging along the floor until he stopped at a patch of disturbed dust, a trail leading toward a narrow drain tunnel in the corner. Someone had been dragged through. There. Recently. Jenna crouched beside him, her voice barely a whisper. You followed him, didn't you? You tried to protect him, even when you were injured. Thor nudged the tunnel opening, urgency trembling through every weak muscle in his body. Evan wasn't gone. Evan was close, and Thor wasn't stopping until they reached him. Thor stared into the narrow drain tunnel, his nostrils flaring, breath trembling as he inhaled the lingering scent of the missing boy. The tunnel was too small for Jenna to enter standing upright, but Thor didn't hesitate. He crouched low, forcing his weakened body to inch forward. Jenna placed a hand on his back. Wait, buddy. You're hurt. Thor paused, but only for a moment. He turned his head, pressing his muzzle into her palm with a soft groan, not of pain, but of insistence. Then Jenna understood. This wasn't just tracking. It was memory. Thor had been here before. He's retracing his path. Jenna whispered to herself. This is how he escaped. She motioned for her flashlight, crouched, and followed closely behind him. The tunnel narrowed into a cramped passage, the air damp and suffocating. Jenna's radio crackled with updates from responding units, but she muted it. Noise could alert whoever operated this hideout. Thor pressed on, limping but determined. With each few feet, he paused to sniff the walls, the floor, the stale air piecing together fragments of what he'd lived through. Jenna could almost see it through his eyes. Thor being dragged in chains, Evan crying somewhere. Ahead, a stranger's boots echoing off the walls, a door slamming, a slap. Scream. Thor collapsing. Then crawling through darkness to escape. Jenna's throat tightened. You survived all of that, just to come back for him? Thor's ears twitched at her voice, but he kept moving until the tunnel widened into another chamber. This one was colder, too cold. A generator hummed somewhere above. A faint light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on metal shelving stacked with crates. Thor limped straight to a spot near the wall and pawed the ground. Jenna knelt, shining her light. A strip of fabric. Blue. From Evan's shirt. Fresh. Thor whined, nudging the fabric toward her as if begging her to understand. Tears filled Jenna's eyes. He was here minutes ago, she whispered. You really saved his trail. Thor stepped back and looked toward a steel staircase leading upward toward danger, and Jenna knew. Thor remembered the way out, and the way to Evan. Jenna climbed the steel staircase with her gun drawn, each step groaning under her weight. Thor stayed close behind despite his trembling legs, refusing to let her go alone. At the top of the steps, a faint strip of light spilled from beneath a heavy metal door. Voices drifted through, muted, angry, hurried. Jenna froze. Someone was still here. She pressed her ear to the door. A deep voice barked orders. The scraping of crates echoed across the room. And then, so faint she nearly missed it, came a soft, terrified sob. A child's sob. Her grip tightened. Evan, she breathed. Thor growled low, lips curling back in a silent warning. Even injured, he stood tall, positioning himself slightly in front of Jenna, instinctively shielding her. Good boy, she whispered, steadying her breath. We do this on my command. She radioed in a whisper. Unit 12 suspects confirmed. Child inside. Initiating breach. Backup was minutes away. They didn't have minutes. Jenna tightened her stance, took one deep breath, then kick. The door slammed open, metal shrieking against concrete. A man spun around in shock, a flashlight in one hand, a crowbar in the other. His eyes widened. "Police, drop it!" Jenna shouted. He lunged instead. Thor launched before Jenna even fired. He collided with the suspect mid-swing, knocking him backward into a stack of crates. The crowbar clattered to the floor as Thor pinned him. Teeth bared, just like in the old days, fierce and unstoppable. Jenna swept the room, heart pounding. "Evan! Evan!" A faint whimper answered from behind a tarp-covered cage. Jenna rushed over, ripping the tarp aside, and there he was, terrified, crying. "Alive!" Thor held the suspect firm, refusing to release until Jenna gave the order. The raid had begun, and Thor had already saved another life. The moment Jenna pulled the tarp away, Evan flinched and curled into himself, shielding his face with trembling hands. He was filthy, bruised, and shivering beneath the dim warehouse lights. For a heartbeat, he didn't recognize that help had finally arrived. "It's okay," Jenna whispered, lowering her weapon and stepping closer slowly. "Evan, my name is Officer Hale. You're safe now." A small, tear-choked voice escaped him. Is the dog real?" Jenna stepped aside just enough for Evan to see Thor still pinning the suspect, growling low and protective. When Thor heard Evan's voice, he looked over, ears softening. Even injured, he gently wagged his tail. Evan's breath hitched. He found me." Jenna nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, he did. He never stopped trying." Thor finally released the subdued kidnapper at Jenna's command and limped toward Evan. The boy's fear melted instantly. He reached out with shaky hands, fingers burying into Thor's worn fur as he whispered, "I knew you'd come back." Jenna blinked, stunned. "You've seen Thor before?" Evan nodded quickly. "He was here. They hit him. They tied him up. But he protected me. He barked when they tried to move me. He scared them. And they hurt him because of it." Tears streamed down his dirt-streaked cheeks. "I thought he died." Jenna's chest tightened. Thor had taken the punishment meant for a child multiple times. "He escaped," she said softly. "He crawled through the tunnels. And he came straight for me. He came back for you." Evan hugged Thor, burying his face in the dog's neck. Thor closed his eyes, leaning into the boy with a gentle rumble of comfort. The distant echo of approaching sirens grew louder. Backup was almost there, but Jenna's focus shifted to the shadows behind Evan's cage stacks of crates. A second set of ropes and documents scattered across a rusted table. "This isn't just one criminal," she murmured. "This is part of something bigger." Thor suddenly lifted his head, ears twitching sharply. Footsteps, slow, heavy, approaching from beyond the dark hallway. Jenna pulled Evan behind her and raised her weapon again. "Stay behind me." Thor, exhausted but unbroken, limped forward to stand at her side. The rescue wasn't over. Someone else was coming. The footsteps drew closer, slow, deliberate, confident. This wasn't someone fleeing. This was someone approaching with purpose. Jenna tightened her grip on her weapon and positioned herself between Evan and the shadowed hallway. Thor growled beside her, a deep, rumbling warning that reverberated across the warehouse floor. A tall figure emerged, dressed in dark clothing, face partially hidden beneath a hood. His eyes glinted with cold calculation as they landed on Jenna, then on Evan, then finally on Thor. "So," he said with a chilling calmness, "the mutt brought company back." Evan whimpered and clutched Jenna's uniform. Thor stepped forward, despite the limp in his weakened leg, taking his protective stance, head lowered, teeth bared. "Police!" Jenna shouted. "Hands where I can see them." The man smirked and instead reached behind his back. "Don't!" Jenna barked, raising her weapon, but he didn't listen. He drew something metallic, a knife glinting under the warehouse lights. Then he lunged. Jenna fired, but the man swerved behind a stack of crates. The bullet ricocheted, and he charged again, faster this time. Jenna moved to shield Evan, but the attacker was already closing in. Thor reacted before anyone else could. With a burst of strength that defied his injuries, Thor launched himself into the man's path. The collision was brutal, echoing through the warehouse as both bodies slammed into the concrete. The knife clattered away. Jenna sprang forward, kicking it out of reach. Thor landed hard, letting out a sharp yelp, but still held onto the man's forearm with unrelenting determination. He wouldn't let him rise. He wouldn't let him reach Jenna or Evan. Backup officers stormed in, tackling the suspect and slapping cuffs on him as Thor finally released his grip, collapsing onto his side. "Thor!" Jenna cried, dropping to her knees. Thor blinked slowly, chest rising and falling in shallow waves. Jenna cradled his head, tears spilling freely. "You saved us." "Again," she whispered. Evan knelt beside them, resting a small hand on Thor's paw. "He's a hero," he said softly. Jenna nodded, voice breaking. "He always has been." The warehouse swarmed with officers, paramedics, and detectives. Red and blue lights flashed against the cracked walls as Evan was gently carried out, wrapped in a warm blanket. He kept looking over his shoulder until he saw Thor being lifted onto a stretcher. Only then did he relax, whispering, "Don't leave him. He saved me."